Tonight our special guest is the baby boomer and the stories about the war that they have all had passed down to them from their fathers. Chosen from the thousands of stories is the one concerning John Gerard. His dad Doug was a hero and made it home to tell the story through his book Unwilling Guests. Celebrating that story, we asked Helen O'Reilly to sing a favourite piece of music from World War II, The White Cliffs of Dover. First we talked to John Gerard, and then we are joined in the studio by Helen Riley. John Gerard, welcome to The Beat Goes On. And what an honour to have you in the studio today, John, for our Anzac special. Look, here's a great book called Unwilling Guests. And your dad was a prisoner of war during the Second World War. And we've chosen you, John, from many thousands of baby boomers that dads went to the war. We've chosen you because your dad wrote a book.
That's correct.
First of all, your father was J.D. Gerard.
Gerard.
John
yep.
Gerard.
John Douglas Gerard.
And you're John Gerard.
I'm John Burnett Gerard. Yeah.
So, John, tell me, you were born in, you're a baby boomer, and you were now
1949.
So what can you remember about your dad telling you stories about the Second World War? What's your first memories?
Well, Gerard, I do recall that every November, from about the age of 4 or 5, when I became aware of it, he would sit in his garage on that day, the 27th of November each year, and have a bit of bread and perhaps some wine to remember the day that he was captured after a battle that he was involved in, resulted in a loss to the German army and capture. And it would always hung heavily on his mind that it had been a terribly sad day.
500 lost friends.
Lost friends, ended up with 500 New Zealanders bedraggled after they'd been in a battle called the Battle of Sidi Aziz, which is in North Africa. And this book tells the story of what happened from that moment onwards.
Yeah. Now, that was in November of
1941.
So your dad then spent the rest of the war in a prisoner of war camp.
He was incarcerated from that time in a couple of prisoner of war camps until he escaped in September 43 and had a 7-week trip through the Italian southern countryside until he connected with the British forces on the Bafuno River. He got back to New Zealand sort of early 1944. He then set about from June 44 to June 45 writing that particular book and got it published in the Christmas of 45 at Whitcomb and Tombs, as Whitcoulls was then known, and had it published. Didn't make a lot of money, but got a lot of therapy out of writing the book, I think.
Kids at school, they would say, what did your dad do in the war? What did your dad do? You could actually say, this is what my dad did.
Correct.
That must have been terrific.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but for some reason, when I was at school, I don't think we talked about the book too much. We were just we're probably that era where we would play war. We would go and buy comics about the war.
Yeah.
The War Picture Library comics occupied our time.
But your dad was a hero. Wow. But you didn't see it that way.
Yeah, we liked to play war up in the bush, and we didn't really understand too much about the book.
Well, you see, my dad, he was in the Home Guard. Now, that to me, that was a pretty good job. He was in one of the essential industries of the coal mining industry, and he had to stay at home. You see, but I always thought that that was just never as good as actually going to war. So.
Right, but it was an essential industry that he had to stay behind for.
So, but that's what I'm trying to get back was that you had that wonderful, proud thing, being a young boy running around playing war. Your dad was a war hero, had actually gone to war, been actually in a battle, and escaped the Germans and made it back to the British lines. Wow, what a story! You must have felt.
Yeah,
this is marvelous.
It was. I always thought it was a wonderful experience, tough though it was. And I think the book is about how they tried to remain cheerful throughout the time, 2.5 years that he was in prison, try to maintain good humour and cheerfulness and maintain good relations with their fellow prisoners.
How did he speak about and feel about the Germans after this experience? Can you remember being anti-German?
Not really anti-German, no. No. And the book talks about the Italians who were their captors and prisoner of war camp, and he developed a great affection for them because it transpired that one of the guards and he had drunk from the same fountain before the war, and that they had both been educated and gone to law school and qualified. The guard as an Italian lawyer, my father as a New Zealand lawyer, and so they put aside all their differences and concentrated on the things they had in common.
Yeah. In the end, what happened to Dad?
He died at the age of 72 in 1989, and after he'd developed lung cancer, and that was the time that he had to pass on because of ill health. But he'd had a pretty good life and had no regrets and no sorrows about anything.
So, John, in your life, when you looked at your dad, what was your proudest moment about Dad?
Well, that he.
When did you realise what a great feat he had been through? How old did you have to be before that happened?
I think at about 9 or 10, both my brother and Jimmy, and I certainly, and my two sisters, we were always astounded at the story that our dad had to say about what he'd done in the war, and we took it all on board, and we probably from the age of 9 or 10, both of us and our sisters when they were at that stage, we liked to hear the stories, and we found it all quite fascinating, yeah. And we.
Now, many men wouldn't talk about these things.
That's right.
Very sorry, but your dad would talk.
He did talk about it, and it did pervade the stories around the family table. And he, for example, he'd say, "Look, I think I'd better have another slice of meat here when we're having a roast dinner, because," he says, "it'll make up for all the times I had very little to eat in prisoner of war camp." Yeah. And that was a ploy that he thought was fair.
Was there any one thing in a nutshell that your dad learned about the whole war experience that he may have told you over and over again that was going to help you in life?
Probably that we just didn't realise how well off we were, and you should realise when you are well off. Sometimes he would say, young people just don't realise how well off they are, because we had not been exposed to the hardships and the deprivation and the hunger and the cold and the tough conditions. When he was escaping, he made the comment at one stage that as they were escaping from the prisoner of war camp, after some days, the peasant folks would come out and greet them as though they were competitors in a long-distance bicycle race and ply them with wine. And they said they would drink the wine so copiously that at one stage they became absolutely unconcerned about the presence of Germans, so it showed that they were taking their mind off the job and enjoying the conviviality. So there were fun times, but there was mainly a lot of tough times, and the book is all about trying to keep up good cheer in difficult conditions, and not to get too bogged down with the sorrow of it all.
John, I'd like to say a big thank you from The Beat Goes On for coming in today. It's essential that we honour Anzac Day, and we wanted a baby boomer story, and we did a bit of research, and we found that you had this wonderful book, and we wanted to hear your story, what it meant to have a dad from a baby boomer point of view in the war. So thank you once again. And to end, John, this little section, we're going to have a beautiful song from World War II, sung by Helen Riley. She's come in specially today to sing a song called The White Cliffs of Dover. Thank you, John. A great story from World War II.
Bluebirds over